The clock was ticking close to midnight when Officer Lisa Rodriguez let out a tired sigh, watching her coffee cup grow empty at the police station. The winter wind howled outside, rattling the windows of the old building. Just 30 more minutes, and her shift would be over. She could already imagine the warmth of her bed and the purring of her cat waiting at home. But life had other plans that night. The radio crackled to life, breaking the peaceful silence of the quiet station. Unit 247, do you copy? The dispatcher's voice carried an unusual edge that made Lisa sit up straighter in her chair. Something felt different about this call. Unit 247 here. Go ahead, she responded, already reaching for her jacket. The heating in her patrol car had been acting up all week, and she knew she'd need the extra layer. We've got a strange one for you, the dispatcher continued. A call just came in from the old industrial district near Watson Street. Caller reports unusual noises coming from the abandoned Riverside warehouse. Probably just kids messing around in there to escape the cold, but... There was a pause that made Lisa's police instincts kick in. After 12 years on the force, she had learned to read between the lines of these calls. Something about this one felt different. But what? She prompted, now fully alert despite her earlier fatigue. Well, the caller, Mrs. Thompson from the bakery across the street, she's been there 20 years, says she's heard all sorts of things from that warehouse. Kids partying, stray cats fighting, even amateur bands practicing. But this, she says she's never heard anything like it. Lisa grabbed her notepad, jotting down the details. Can you be more specific? That's the thing, the dispatcher replied, his voice lowering slightly. She described it as a mix between crying and singing. Said it sounds like someone's in pain, but then it changes into this beautiful melody. She's pretty shaken up about it. The winter wind seemed to grow stronger outside, and Lisa felt a shiver run down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. She'd handled thousands of calls over her career, domestic disputes, break-ins, drunk and disorderly conduct, but something about this one made her skin prickle. Copy that, she said, grabbing her keys. I'll check it out. As she walked to her patrol car, the sound of her boots echoing in the empty parking lot, Lisa ran through the possibilities in her mind. Could be homeless people seeking shelter from the storm. Maybe someone hurt, needing help but afraid to ask for it directly. Or it could be nothing at all, just the wind playing tricks through the old building's broken windows. But deep down, as she started her car and watched the windshield wipers push away the first flakes of snow, she knew this call would be different. There was something about the dispatcher's voice, something about Mrs. Thompson's description that told her this wasn't going to be a routine check. The streets were nearly empty as she drove, the storefronts dark except for the occasional neon sign buzzing in the night. The industrial district lay ahead, a maze of old warehouses and forgotten dreams of a once bustling manufacturing hub. Riverside Warehouse stood at its heart, a hulking shadow against the cloudy night sky. Lisa switched off her sirens as she approached, no need to announce her arrival if someone was really in trouble. The radio crackled again, offering to send backup, but she decided to assess the situation first. Sometimes, showing up alone was less threatening, made it easier for people to trust you. As she pulled up to the warehouse, killing her headlights, Lisa took a deep breath and reminded herself why she'd become a cop in the first place. Not for the excitement or the authority, but for moments like these, when someone might need help, when she could make a real difference in someone's life. She stepped out of her car, the cold immediately biting at her face. The warehouse loomed before her, its broken windows like dark eyes watching her every move. And then she heard it, faint but unmistakable. The sound that would change not just her night, but her entire life. Someone was definitely inside, and what she would find in there would shake her to her very core. Officer Lisa Rodriguez sat in her patrol car for a moment, studying the warehouse through her windshield. The falling snow had picked up, creating a ghostly curtain around the streetlights. The building's brick walls, darkened by decades of neglect, stretched up into the night sky like a forgotten giant. The strange sounds that brought her here had stopped. Complete silence fell over the area, broken only by the soft patter of snowflakes hitting her car roof. It was the kind of silence that made your ears ring, the kind that made you wonder if you were truly alone. 20 years ago, this warehouse had been the heart of the city's textile industry. Now it stood as a shell of its former self, windows boarded up with plywood that had weathered countless storms. But tonight, something was different. Through the gaps in those boards, Lisa could see faint traces of light, not the steady beam of a flashlight, but something flickering like candles. She reached for her radio, following protocol even as her instincts urged her to move faster. "Dispatch, this is Unit 247 at Riverside Warehouse. I've got signs of activity inside. Requesting backup for a structural check." Her voice sounded unnaturally loud in the quiet night. "Copy that, Unit 247. Officers Peters and Thompson are responding, ETA 8 minutes. 8 minutes. Lisa glanced at the warehouse again, remembering Mrs. Thompson's description of the sounds, somewhere between crying and singing. In 8 minutes, whoever was inside could be gone, or worse, in danger. Sometimes being a good cop meant knowing when to wait and when to act. She stepped out of her car, the snow crunching under her boots. The cold hit her face like tiny needles, and her breath came out in white puffs. Her hand rested on her flashlight as she approached the building, every step measured and deliberate. The warehouse had a main entrance, long sealed with a heavy chain, but Lisa's trained eye caught something else, a service door on the side, partially hidden behind overgrown bushes. As she got closer, she noticed fresh footprints in the snow leading to it, already being filled in by fresh snowfall. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing that the door wasn't fully closed. Someone had jimmied the lock recently. The scratches on the metal were still bright, uncorroded by rust. Lisa's heart beat faster, but her hands remained steady as she drew her flashlight closer. The wind picked up, whistling through the gaps in the building's walls. But underneath that sound, something else caught her attention. The strange noise was back, clearer now that she was closer. Mrs. Thompson's description had been surprisingly accurate. It was like nothing Lisa had heard in her 12 years on the force. The sound held pain, yes, but also something else. Hope. It reminded her of the lullabies her grandmother used to sing, songs that carried generations of stories and emotions that didn't need translation to be understood. Lisa pulled out her phone, quickly typing a message to dispatch with her exact location, another protocol she'd learned to follow after years on the job. Then, with one final look at the snowy street behind her, she made her decision. The door opened with a slight creak that seemed to echo through the empty building. The flashlight beam revealed what looked like an old loading area, filled with the shadows of abandoned machinery. Dust particles danced in the light, stirred up by the draft from the door. The singing grew louder, pulling her deeper into the warehouse. Each step brought her closer to its source, while her mind ran through various scenarios she might encounter. Her training had prepared her for dangerous situations, but something told her this was different. The beam of her flashlight caught movement ahead, a quick shadow darting between the old machines. Then another. Lisa's hand instinctively moved to her weapon, but she didn't draw it. The movements didn't feel threatening. They felt afraid. As she rounded a corner of stacked wooden pallets, the singing abruptly stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. Lisa's flashlight beam traced across the floor, following a trail of recent footprints in the dust. They led to something that made her freeze in place, a sight that would forever change her understanding of what it meant to be a police officer. What she discovered in that moment would not only bring tears to her eyes, but would remind her why she had chosen this path in life. Sometimes the most important moments in our careers come not from following protocols, but from following our humanity. Inside the warehouse, Lisa's flashlight beam cut through layers of darkness, revealing a world frozen in time. Old machinery stood like sleeping giants, their metal surfaces dulled by years of dust. The beam caught cobwebs stretching between silent conveyor belts, making them sparkle like strands of silver in the darkness. The singing had stopped, but now she could hear something else. The soft sound of whispered voices and quick, shuffling movements. Her flashlight revealed fresh footprints in the dust, leading deeper into the building's heart. These weren't the chaotic patterns left by teenage troublemakers. These were purposeful tracks, telling a story of people trying to stay hidden. As Lisa moved forward, her boots crunching softly on scattered debris, she noticed signs of life emerging from the abandonment. An empty water bottle here, a food wrapper there. Someone had been living in this forgotten place, making a home among the shadows. The air grew warmer as she moved deeper into the warehouse. The boarded windows had created a shelter from the winter storm, and she could see why someone might choose this place as a refuge. Her beam caught something unexpected, a child's drawing pinned to one of the concrete pillars, bright colors stark against the gray surface. It showed a simple house with a family standing outside, the kind of drawing that spoke of dreams and hope. Her radio crackled softly. Backup was 2 minutes out, but Lisa knew she couldn't wait. That singing she'd heard, it hadn't been a cry for help, but it hadn't been a threat either. It had been something else entirely, something that tugged at her heart in a way she couldn't explain. Rounding another corner, Lisa's flashlight revealed a pathway cleared through the machinery. Someone had carefully moved things aside, creating a safe route. The beam caught something else. Strings of old Christmas lights hung between the pillars, not plugged in but ready to bring light to this dark place. Paper snowflakes, carefully cut and strung together, hung from the ceiling. The singing started again, closer now. The voice was clearer, a woman's voice, rich with emotion. The melody was unfamiliar, but the feeling it carried was universal. It spoke of love, of sacrifice, of holding on to hope when everything else was lost. Lisa followed the voice, her steps slow and deliberate. She didn't want to frighten whoever was here. The beam of her flashlight finally revealed a space that made her heart skip a beat. A small area had been transformed into something that could only be described as a home. Old shipping pallets had been arranged to create walls, with blankets hung between them for privacy. Cardboard boxes had been flattened and layered on the concrete floor, topped with thin mattresses probably salvaged from somewhere. More children's drawings covered these makeshift walls, bringing color to the darkness. And there, in the center of this humble space, sat a young woman with 2 small children huddled close to her. She was wrapped in a worn coat, her eyes wide with fear as she pulled her children closer. But it was the children that caught Lisa's breath. They were dressed in clean clothes despite their surroundings, their hair neatly combed, school backpacks stacked neatly against the wall. The woman's song died in her throat as she met Lisa's eyes. For a moment, neither of them moved. The only sound was the distant howl of the wind and the soft breathing of the children, who looked at Lisa with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Lisa slowly lowered her flashlight, making sure it didn't shine directly in their faces. In that moment, she wasn't just a police officer following protocol. She was a human being seeing other human beings in need. The woman's eyes held no defiance, no anger. Only a mother's fierce determination to protect her children and give them a chance at a better life. Around them, Lisa could see signs of their daily life. Homework papers carefully protected in plastic folders, a small collection of books from the public library, clean dishes stacked on a makeshift shelf. These weren't people looking to cause trouble. They were a family trying to survive, trying to hold on to dignity in impossible circumstances. The backup officers would be arriving any minute now. Their footsteps would soon echo through the warehouse. But in that moment, as Lisa looked at this family who had made a home in the shadows, she knew that this situation needed more than just standard police procedure. This discovery would require something else entirely. It would require humanity, compassion, and the understanding that sometimes life's most important moments come when we see beyond our badges and uniforms to the hearts beating beneath them. Lisa slowly knelt down, keeping her movements gentle and non-threatening. The concrete floor was cold through her uniform pants, but she barely noticed. Her focus was entirely on the family before her, especially the 2 children who couldn't have been more than 7 and 5 years old. The older child, a girl with carefully braided hair, held her little brother protectively. Despite their circumstances, both children were clean and well cared for, a testament to their mother's dedication. The little boy clutched a worn teddy bear, its fur matted from countless hugs but clearly treasured. "I'm Officer Rodriguez," Lisa said softly, "but you can call me Lisa." She switched her flashlight to a softer setting, letting it point toward the ground. The Christmas lights strung above them cast a gentle glow, creating shadows that danced across their faces. The mother straightened her back, gathering her courage. "I am Maid," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her accent was thick, but her eyes spoke volumes, fear mixed with determination, worry tangled with hope. "Please, my children." Lisa raised her hand gently, showing she meant no harm. "Your children are beautiful," she said, smiling at the little ones. "I heard you singing to them. It was lovely." At the mention of her singing, something in May's face softened slightly. "Old song from home," she explained. "My mother sang to me, her mother sang to her. Now I sing to my children, helps them be brave." The little girl whispered something to her mother in another language, and May stroked her hair reassuringly. Lisa noticed how the girl's backpack had carefully protected homework sheets peeking out, evidence that despite everything, these children were still attending school, still dreaming of a future. "How long have you been here?" Lisa asked, keeping her voice gentle. Her radio buzzed softly. Backup was close now. She needed to understand their story before more officers arrived. May's eyes darted to the warehouse entrance, then back to Lisa. 3 weeks, she answered. "Before this, we stayed different places, but here is warm, quiet. I clean everything, keep children safe." She gestured to their small space, and Lisa saw how meticulously organized everything was. The makeshift home told its own story. A small collection of canned foods was arranged neatly on a wooden crate. Clothes were folded carefully in plastic bins, protected from dust. School books were stacked neatly, bookmarked with paper scraps. On one wall, a calendar marked with gold stars showed perfect school attendance for both children. "You're doing an amazing job taking care of them," Lisa said, and she meant it. In her years on the force, she'd seen all kinds of desperate situations, but this was different. This wasn't just survival, this was a mother fighting to give her children a future, to keep their dignity intact despite impossible circumstances. The little boy suddenly spoke up, his voice small but clear. "I got a star in math today," he said, pointing to a paper pinned to their makeshift wall. His sister shushed him, but Lisa smiled warmly. "That's wonderful," she replied, her heart tightening in her chest. These weren't just homeless people in need of help, they were a family holding on to dreams, working hard for a better tomorrow. May's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back quickly. "In our country, very dangerous now," she explained haltingly. "My husband, they take him. I don't know," she stopped, pulling her children closer. "I promised them safe life. Education. Future. Even if we must hide, must be careful." The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the warehouse. May tensed, fear flooding back into her eyes. The children pressed closer to their mother, and the little boy's teddy bear fell to the floor. Without thinking, Lisa picked it up, gently dusted it off, and handed it back to him. In that simple gesture, something passed between Lisa and May, an understanding, a promise. This wasn't going to be a typical police response. Lisa had seen too much in this makeshift home, understood too much about this family's struggle to simply follow standard procedure. The approaching officer's flashlight beams bounced off the warehouse walls, getting closer. Lisa stood slowly, her mind racing through possibilities, through connections she'd made over years of community service. She thought about the homeless shelter where she volunteered, about Pastor Mike, who never turned away anyone in need, about the immigration lawyer who'd helped her own cousins years ago. Sometimes being a good police officer meant seeing the bigger picture. Sometimes it meant understanding that law and justice weren't always the same thing. As she turned to face her approaching colleagues, Lisa knew that what happened next would require more than just following protocol. It would require following her heart. 2 other officers entered the makeshift living space, their flashlights sweeping across the scene. Lisa raised her hand slightly, a silent signal to her colleagues to lower their lights. Officer Chen, a veteran of 20 years, immediately understood the situation and softened his approach. Officer Rivera followed suit, her experience with community outreach evident in her gentle demeanor. Lisa pulled out her phone and opened a translation app she'd used countless times before. "It might help us understand each other better," she explained to May, who nodded gratefully. The children watched with curiosity as Lisa placed the phone between them. Through the app and with patient pauses, May's story began to unfold. She had been a teacher in her home country, teaching young children just like her own. Her husband worked as a journalist, writing about things the government didn't want revealed. One night, men in dark clothes came to their home. They took him away while May hid in the closet with the children, covering their mouths to keep them quiet. 3 days we wait, May spoke softly, her words translated by the app. "He no come home. Neighbor tell me police looking for teacher wives too. Say we help husbands spread bad stories." She stroked her daughter's hair as she spoke, a gesture of comfort that seemed as much for herself as for the child. The little girl, who they learned was named Joy, pulled a folded paper from her pocket. It was a family photo, creased and worn from constant handling. In it, they were all smiling, standing in front of a small house with bright flowers in the garden. The little boy, Andy, pointed to his father in the picture. "Papa Strong," he said in English, words clearly practiced and treasured. Through the translation app, May continued her story. They had fled that very night, taking only what they could carry. Her sister in America had helped arrange their journey, selling her car to pay for their escape. But when they finally reached the city, they learned her sister had moved away for work, leaving no forwarding address. "First we stay shelter," May explained, her words appearing on the phone screen. "But too many questions. Afraid someone report us. Children still go school, education most important. I clean offices at night when confined work. We move place to place. Here is best, quiet, warm." Officer Chen knelt down beside Lisa, his face softening as he watched Andy carefully put the family photo back in his sister's pocket. "My grandparents came here with nothing," he said quietly to Lisa. "Lived in a basement for 2 years. Now my cousin's a doctor." Officer Rivera had been looking around the space, noting the children's school books, the carefully maintained cleanliness, the small altar with a single candle where May clearly said her prayers. "The school district knows they're here?" she asked gently. May nodded. "Kind teacher help. She knows situation, give children extra food sometimes. They do good in school." She reached for a folder, pulling out recent report cards. Despite everything, both children were excelling in their classes. Joy had even won a math competition last month. Lisa watched as Joy took her little brother's hand, whispering something that made him smile. Despite their circumstances, there was so much love here, so much determination to build a better life. The Christmas lights above them flickered, creating a warm glow that seemed to soften the harsh reality of their situation. "We try stay invisible," May explained, her voice breaking slightly. "I know not legal, but children." She stopped, fighting back tears. "They deserve chance. Chance to learn, to grow, to be safe. Even if means we hide, we scared. Better than..." She couldn't finish, but they all understood what she left unsaid. The translation app continued to facilitate their conversation, but something deeper was happening in that moment, a bridge of understanding built not just through words, but through shared humanity. Officer Chen shared a story about his grandmother's dumplings, making Andy giggle. Officer Rivera found common ground with Joy over their shared love of mathematics. As they talked, the warehouse didn't feel cold anymore. The makeshift home, created with so much care and hope, had become a space of connection and understanding. Lisa watched as her fellow officers saw what she had seen, not a case to be processed, but a family fighting for survival, for dignity, for a future. The morning shift would be starting soon. Decisions needed to be made, actions needed to be taken. But as Lisa looked at her colleagues' faces, she knew they were all thinking the same thing. Sometimes, the right path forward isn't found in a police manual, it's found in the heart. The early morning light was beginning to creep through the warehouse windows as Lisa stepped outside with Officers Chen and Rivera. The snow had stopped, leaving the world covered in a pristine white blanket. They needed to make some decisions, and they needed to make them fast. "We can't just call this in as a routine case," Lisa said, her breath visible in the cold air. She pulled out her personal phone, scrolling through contacts she'd gathered over years of community work. "These kids are thriving in school despite everything. And their mother." Officer Chen nodded, completing her thought. "She's doing everything possible to give them a normal life. Did you see how organized their homework area was? Those kids haven't missed a single day of school." Officer Rivera had been quietly thinking, her experience with similar situations evident in her thoughtful expression. "I know someone at the Community Support Center," she said. "They have a program for families in crisis. It's not perfect, but it's a start." Lisa's phone buzzed, a response from Pastor Mike at the local church. He'd helped countless families over the years, no questions asked. "Pastor Mike can offer them temporary shelter in the church's family unit," she said. "It's warm, private, and most importantly, safe." Inside the warehouse, they could see May through the doorway, helping her children pack their few belongings. Even in this moment of uncertainty, she maintained a calm presence for their sake. Joy was carefully placing their schoolbooks in her backpack, while Andy hugged his teddy bear close. "We need to think long-term," Officer Chen said, his voice firm but gentle. "Shelter is just the first step. They need legal help, proper documentation." He paused, then added, "My sister-in-law works with an immigration advocacy group. They've handled cases like this before." Lisa felt a wave of gratitude for her fellow officers. In their line of work, it would have been easy to simply follow protocol, to treat this as just another case to be processed. Instead, they were choosing to see the humanity in the situation, to find a way to help that went beyond their badges. They walked back inside, where May was trying to maintain a brave face for her children. Lisa knelt down to her eye level, speaking softly as Officer Rivera translated. "May, we want to help you and your children. We know some people, good people, who can offer you a safe place to stay." May's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back quickly, not wanting to frighten her children. You not sent us back." The fear in her voice was heartbreaking. "No," Lisa assured her. "We're going to help you find a way to stay here legally and safely. It won't be easy, and it will take time, but you won't have to hide anymore." Officer Chen stepped forward, speaking in May's native language, a few simple phrases he'd learned from his grandparents. Though his pronunciation was rough, the effect was immediate. May's shoulders relaxed slightly, and for the first time, a small smile appeared on her face. Joy tugged at Lisa's sleeve, her voice small but hopeful. "Can we still go to school?" "Of course you can," Lisa answered, her heart warming at the girl's priority. "You'll keep going to the same school, no more worrying about having to leave suddenly." They helped the family gather their belongings, the school books, the carefully folded clothes, the precious family photograph. Officer Rivera made a call to the community support center, setting things in motion. Pastor Mike texted back with details about the family unit, including pictures to show the children their new temporary home. As they packed, Andy's teddy bear fell again. This time, when Lisa picked it up, the little boy didn't snatch it back in fear. Instead, he showed her how the bear's bow tie could spin, giggling at the simple trick. It was a small moment, but it spoke volumes about the trust that had been built. The morning shift would be changing soon, and with it would come questions and paperwork. But as Lisa watched Officer Chen help Joy carefully pack her math competition trophy and Officer Rivera make plans with the support center, she knew they had made the right decision. Sometimes, being a police officer meant protecting people not just from danger, but from despair. It meant finding ways to uphold both the law and human dignity. As they prepared to leave the warehouse, Lisa saw something she hadn't noticed before: a small paper crane, carefully folded, sitting on the makeshift altar. A symbol of hope, of new beginnings, of dreams taking flight. 1 year later, Lisa sat at her desk in the police station, a cup of coffee warming her hands as she looked at a new photo frame beside her computer. The picture showed May and her children standing in front of a small apartment building, their faces bright with genuine smiles. It wasn't just a photograph, it was a reminder of why she'd chosen this profession in the first place. The journey hadn't been easy. The first few weeks after finding them in the warehouse had been filled with challenges. Pastor Mike's church provided immediate shelter, but it was the community that truly stepped forward to embrace the family. Officer Chen's sister-in-law worked tirelessly on their case, finding legal pathways to help them stay safely in the country. The local school officially registered the children, providing them with supplies and support. Joy's math teacher, who had been secretly helping them all along, organized a tutoring program. Andy's kindergarten class welcomed him with open arms, and soon his broken English blossomed into confident chatter. Lisa smiled, remembering the day May got her first official job at the local library. The same determination that had kept her family safe in the warehouse now showed in how quickly she learned the library's systems. Children loved her story times, where she sometimes incorporated songs from her homeland, including the lullaby that had first led Lisa to them that snowy night. Officer Rivera had helped May enroll in English classes at the community college, and now she was working towards recertifying as a teacher. The same skills that had kept her children's education on track in the warehouse were now helping other immigrant children adapt to their new school environment. The Christmas lights from the warehouse had found a new home too. They now decorated Mi's small apartment balcony, a reminder of how far they'd come. The paper snowflakes the children had made now hung in their own bedroom windows, no longer hidden in shadows. Lisa's phone buzzed. A text from May with a photo of Andy's latest school achievement. He'd been chosen to represent his class in the school's reading competition. The teddy bear with the spinning bow tie still went everywhere with him, but now it had a friend. A police bear in full uniform, which Andy had named Officer Lisa. Joy had blossomed too. Her math skills had earned her a spot in an advanced program, and she'd started a study group to help other students. The quiet, protective girl from the warehouse had become a confident young leader, though she still kept that worn family photograph in her pocket. The biggest surprise had come 3 months ago. Through the tireless work of international advocacy groups, they'd finally located Mi's husband. He was alive, having escaped to a neighboring country. The paperwork was complicated, but there was hope he would be able to join them soon. Lisa had been there when Mai first saw his face on a video call, when the children first heard their father's voice again. Some moments in police work stayed with you forever. That was one of them. The warehouse itself had changed too. The city had renovated it into a community center, with a section dedicated to helping families in crisis. The Christmas lights that had once hidden in darkness now hung proudly in the center's windows, a beacon for others seeking hope. Officer Chen and Officer Rivera remained deeply involved with the family's journey. Chen's grandmother had adopted May, teaching her to make traditional dumplings that now appeared at every police department potluck. Rivera's connections with the Community Support Center had helped countless other families find their footing. Lisa picked up her coffee cup, noticing the small paper crane that May had given her, now sitting permanently on her desk. She'd learned that in May's culture, paper cranes symbolized hope and healing. Looking at it now, Lisa thought it symbolized something else too, the power of seeing beyond badges and protocols to the humanity that connected everyone. Later that afternoon, Lisa had plans to attend Joy's school science fair. The girl who had once hidden in a warehouse was now proudly displaying her project on solar energy. Andy would be there too, probably wearing his junior police badge, a gift from the department on his birthday. As Lisa prepared to head out on patrol, she glanced one more time at the family photo. The warehouse call that snowy night could have gone so many different ways. But because 3 police officers chose to listen to their hearts while honoring their duty, a family found not just safety, but a true home. Sometimes the most important moments in law enforcement weren't about enforcing laws at all. They were about understanding that behind every case, every call, every scared face in the darkness, there was a human story waiting to be heard. And sometimes, by simply listening to those stories with an open heart, incredible changes could begin.